So our topic for today is market structures. When we talk about market structures, folks, we're really talking about theory of the firm. Theory of the firm. And specifically in the context of the type of industry they're in. So the theory of the firm in the context of the type of industry that they're in. Now, we know that not all industries are the same, right? We know that some are highly competitive. And we know that some are monopolized. So some are monopolies. So we want to talk about the different types of industries, monopoly, competitive, and then how firms are going to operate within those. And so this is going to be kind of a lot, and it's all highly graphical, okay? Today won't be highly graphical. This will just kind of be an overview. All right? So market structures. Theory of the firm in the context of the type of industry that they're in, where industries can be different, highly competitive, monopolized industry. And so we want to understand how that will influence firm behavior. All right? So the first thing we want to understand when we talk about market structures is that market structures are going to start off as a set of assumptions. So market structures are going to start off as a set of assumptions. And those assumptions basically describe the industry. So there's a set of assumptions that describes the industry. And from those assumptions, from that kind of description, we can make conclusions. And in those conclusions, we're going to be talking about how a firm behaves. Now, we need to talk about things like how the firm sets price. How does a firm set their price? That's going to be certainly influenced by the type of industry that you're in. We need to talk about how firms set output. We want to talk about whether or not they can make economic profits being greater than zero in the long run. So how do they set their output? How do they set their price? Can they make economic profits greater than zero in the long run? So we'll talk more about what that means. Is there a role for marketing? Advertising. So is there a role for advertising? All right, so those are just kind of some of the things that we want to take a look at. So firm behavior in the context of the type of industry that we're in. Now, another thing we need to understand is that when we look at market structures, we're going to look at a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, we're going to have what we call perfect competition. And there's actually 4 market structures. So there's 2 in between, and on the other end, we have monopoly. So we're going to be thinking about market structures as a spectrum. And one thing that we're going to be changing along this spectrum is market power. So as we move in this direction, we're going to see market power. So as we move to the right, on this spectrum, we're going to see a gain in market power. We're going to see a gain in market power. So let's remind ourselves what we mean by market power. So when we talk about market power, we're talking about a firm's ability to influence the market. A firm's ability to influence the market. For example, we might be asking, is the firm a pure price taker? And if they're not a pure price taker, then we might be asking, does the firm have the ability to set its own price? Does the firm have the ability to set its own price? Sometimes you might see the phrase market power referred to as monopoly power. Doesn't mean you're a monopoly. We can think of this as a spectrum. So if you have market power, then you have some degree of monopoly power. Doesn't make you a monopoly, but you could have some degree of monopoly power. So if I say, does this firm have any monopoly power? I might be asking, do they have any market power? Doesn't mean I'm asking, are they a monopoly? But I might be saying, do they have any of those same abilities as a monopoly does to be able to set their own price and influence the market? All right. So we have basically, as we just said, 4 different market structures. And today is going to be an overview of those 4 market structures. All right. So let's get started. Now, you might want to turn a blank page sideways. I don't know. But what I'm going to do here is create a spectrum that goes all the way across my screen. So you might decide you want to turn your notebook sideways. Might be better for note taking. Because we're going to get in 4 market structures. So the first market structure that we're going to talk about is perfect competition. The model of perfect competition. And in the model of perfect competition, we have 4 assumptions. We have 4 assumptions. Assumption number 1 is that we have a large number of buyers and sellers. Large number of buyers and sellers. Now, I'm going to put my assumptions in black, and in red, I'm going to kind of put the implications. All right, so you might want to color code, but you need to make a note that the numbered things are the assumptions, and the things that I'm putting in red are kind of the implications. All right. So if we have a market with a large number of buyers and sellers, does any one buyer have power? Any one seller have power, do you think? Any one firm have power? No. So if we have a very large number of buyers and sellers, then we have this implication that no one firm can influence the market. No one firm can influence the market. In other words, they're just a very small part of the total market. So no one firm can influence the market. They're just a very small part of what is otherwise a large industry. All right, so large number of buyers and sellers. Assumption number 2. Assumption number 2 is that they are selling a homogeneous product. They're selling a homogeneous product. So if they're selling a homogeneous product, what would homogeneous imply? Yeah, they're the same, they're identical. So if they're identical goods or services, so they're identical goods or services. So if we've got a homogeneous product and they're identical to each other, then what can I conclude about substitutability? Are they substitutes for each other? Are they close substitutes for each other? Can I say something even stronger? Sarah, you said something? They're perfect substitutes, exactly. So they're identical goods, which makes them perfect substitutes for each other. Now, let's think about that for a second. You and I are selling an identical product. Can I charge more than you? Can I charge more than you? Assuming that everyone knows all the information. If I charge $5 and you're charging $4, what's going to happen? Anyone buying from me at $5? If you have the identical good at $4, assuming that everyone kind of knows all the full information. So we should make a note that this has an implication for pricing. This has an implication for pricing. I'm not going to be able to price above you. Assumption number 3, and this is going to be coming in handy. We're going to be utilizing this assumption soon, but this is the idea of free entry and exit. So what that means is firms can easily enter. So we have an ease of entry and of exit. Another way of saying that, free entry and free exit, or that there's an ease of entry and exit, so firms can easily enter, easily exit. Another way you would see me phrase that is that there are no barriers. No barriers to entry and exit. If people want to enter this industry, it's easy. If people want to, what's that? No, that's just another explanation. So free entry and free exit, it might be also expressed as there's no barriers to entry and exit. Okay? So the implication, if firms can easily enter, let's think about the implication then. If firms are making money in this industry, what's going to happen? So let's say we have an industry where firms are making money. More businesses want to come in. Exactly. The new firms are going to want to enter. So if we have a situation where firms are making money in this industry, and it looks like it's a place where you can be successful, then new firms want to enter. But what happens when new firms enter? When there's more competition, what happens to profits, do you think? Yeah, they're going to decrease. So if firms are making money, the new firms are going to enter, but that's going to decrease profits. So we're going to be talking more about that idea. So this idea of entry is going to be part of your homework, okay? Just learning a little bit more about this idea of what happens when firms enter, okay? All right, so that's assumption number 3, free entry and exit, or saying there's no barriers to entry and exit. And then assumption number 4 is that everyone has perfect information. Everyone has perfect information. So in other words, all parties have full knowledge of what's going on. Now, that means everyone knows prices, everyone knows about quality. There's no asymmetric information. I don't have information that you do have, or vice versa. You don't have information that I don't have. Does that make sense? There's no kind of strategic information. So back to this idea, perfect information, all parties have full knowledge. If you're charging $4, can I charge $5? If you're charging $4, can I charge $5? If everyone's fully informed, is anyone buying from me? No, no. So the implication, again, this is going to have an implication for pricing. And that implication on pricing is that one seller can't charge more. Everyone agree with that? Because these are identical products, remember? Let's make a little arrow and remind ourselves that we're in a world of perfect information, and in that world of perfect information, we have people selling identical products. So what might be an example of this kind of industry? Well, agricultural industries often look this way. So let's talk about wheat. Wheat might be an example of a perfectly competitive market. So let's talk about wheat for a second. Does everyone agree in the market for wheat, there are a large number of buyers and sellers, right? Right? Can any one farmer dominate, do you think? Probably not. Now, again, we have these kind of large corporate farms, so things are getting a little different, but this is such a large market that even large corporate farms still aren't huge portions of the entire market. Number 2, are wheat suppliers selling a homogeneous product? After we bring wheat to market and we grade it, I'm sure there's different grades of wheat. If we're looking at grade A wheat, I'm just making this up, I don't know if they call it grade A, but if we're calling, grade A wheat, do you care whose wheat you get? No, it's all the same, right? Once it's graded, it's all the same. So we've met the second criteria, homogeneous products. Third, free entry and free exit. Could we enter the wheat industry, do you think? Could you buy a farm and grow wheat? Yeah. Now, guys, is that the same with tobacco? Can you grow a farm and Can you buy a farm and grow tobacco? Anyone know how tobacco works? Can anyone grow tobacco? No, there's restrictions. You have to have a permit. So I wouldn't call tobacco a perfectly competitive market, because if you're not a tobacco grower with a permit, you're not going to get to grow tobacco. But if you want to buy a farm and grow wheat, you can. Number 4, perfect information. This might be a little bit of a stretch, but guys, do you think that farmers have very rich information about what the market price is going to be? When they go to market, do you think they know what market prices are? I think they probably do. Now, maybe not with perfect certainty, but I think there's a very rich information. So I would say that the market for wheat probably looks about as good as anything in terms of being a perfectly competitive market. Now, let me ask you one question before we move on. Do grocery stores sell the same products, or a lot of the same products? Do you think that Food Lion and Walmart have the same products on the shelves? Not everything, but do they have a lot of the same products? Do they have Del Monte ketchup? Do they have Green Giant green beans? Yeah. Do they have the same prices? No. So how is it that for wheat, you can't charge $5 if I'm charging $4, but yet Food Lion and Walmart charge different prices. How is that possible? Okay, they have a little MVP card, so I get better prices if I've joined this to get the MVP benefits. That's a good answer. So they're kind of rewarding customer loyalty. But how is it possible? How is it possible if we have two stores selling the identical products that they don't just have the same prices without the MVP card? Do you think that we operate in a world of perfect information for groceries? Do we operate in perfect information? No. Does anyone know what all the prices are at all grocery stores? No. So do you have some imperfect information when it comes to groceries? Yeah. So if we see different sellers selling identical goods at different prices, what might be the explanation? They're not operating in perfect information. So is that why maybe Food Lion might be able to charge a little bit more for ketchup one day than Walmart? And maybe Walmart can charge a little bit more for milk? Yeah. Is anyone going to take the time to figure it out? Anyone going to both stores, comparing and then deciding where they're buying each product? Probably not, right? So why I'm bringing this up is I want you to understand how rich this assumption is. When we say that we have perfect information, that is a very important assumption, right? Does that make sense? That tells us a lot about firm behavior. Okay, so perfect competition, wheat. So let's ask some questions, and I'm going to have to move on to the next page here so we don't run a room. So let's talk about some conclusions based on the assumptions. So I'm still under perfect competition. So guys, do we see a role for advertising? Do we see a role for advertising here? Do we ever see a farmer say, I'm Farmer Bob, buy my wheat? Ever? No. So we don't see individual firm advertising. Right? Because what would they say? What would they say about their product? It's identical, so they can't say my wheat's better than everyone else's wheat, because it's not. Can they say my wheat's cheaper? No, they're all selling at the market price. So there's nothing they can really say, right? So we don't really see any role for advertising here. What about prices? Are we going to see different prices? Or are we going to see the same prices? We're going to see different prices or the same prices, everyone? Yeah, prices will be uniform, right? For the same grade, at least, right? There's not going to be price differentiation, right? So if firms can't change their price above everybody else's, do they sound like they have market power, guys? Do firms sound like they have market power? No. So we would say that firms have no market power. Do they get to set their price? Where does their price come from? So they can't set their price. Where does their price come from? Yeah, price comes from the market. So firms have no market power. They can't set their own price. They're going to take the price from the market. So we would call them a price taker. All right. So the model of perfect competition. There's a lot to it. We're going to be studying it in more depth, but do you understand kind of the basics, right? Do you see what I mean about there's a set of assumptions, and those set of assumptions. So here's our assumptions, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, red are kind of the implications, the explanations, and from those assumptions, we can form conclusions. All right? So let's move on to our next model. Our next model is what we call monopolistic Competition. Monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition. Now, guys, it's a little bit of a misleading name. So write in your notes, please, that when I say monopolistic competition, it's competition with just a hint of monopoly power. It's competition with a hint of monopoly power. Competition with a hint of monopoly power. Okay. So we have a hint of monopoly power. So it's competition with just a hint of monopoly power. So assumptions. We're going to keep assumption number 1 the same. Large number of buyers and sellers. We're going to keep assumption 3 the same. So number 1 is going to be the same. Assumption number 3 is the same. We're going to lose this assumption number 4. But we're going to make one very small change. Instead of number 2 being homogeneous products, we're going to make number 2 that products are slightly differentiated products. Slightly differentiated products. So instead of identical, homogeneous products that are perfect substitutes, these are going to be slightly differentiated products. So the implication here, if I change this to slightly differentiated products, are these perfect substitutes anymore? Are they perfect substitutes? No. So they're no longer perfect substitutes. But they're still close substitutes. So they're no longer perfect substitutes, but they're still close substitutes. Now, guys, imagine a world where instead of being identical products, they're similar but not identical. Now, does that open up some competition? Because think about it. I've got to convince you that mine's better, mine's different, right? So this is going to change behavior quite a lot. So what would be an example here of monopolistic competition? I would probably say shampoo. Shampoo. So let's see if it fits. Do we have a large number of buyers and sellers of shampoo? Any one firm dominate the shampoo market? No, it seems like a pretty competitive market, right? Highly competitive. So we have a lot of buyers and sellers of shampoo. So let's make that note. So we see a lot of buyers and sellers of shampoo. Number 2, are they slightly differentiated? How are they different? What was that? How are they different? Sulfate. Some are sulfate or sulfate free. What's another way they vary? Ingredients. Scents, right? Does everyone have a favorite shampoo, or at least some they really like better than others? Yeah, kind of have a little brand loyalty for some of you. Some of you probably buy whatever's cheapest, whatever's on sale. But some of us might like a certain brand. All right. So number 3, free entry and exit. Free entry and free exit. Do you think it would be easy to enter the shampoo industry? Especially if you're a firm making a related product. What if you're Dial soap? Would it be easy for Dial Soap to start making shampoo and conditioner? Yeah. So it would be easy for firms to enter. So I gave you the example, Dial Soap, or whoever's making it, Palmolive, and they want to have Dial shampoo. Or maybe you're a company that specializes in body lotions and you don't have any shampoos. You do soaps and body lotions. Could you come up with a shampoo, do you think? Yeah. So I think it'd be pretty easy to enter this industry. All right. So let's think about some of the conclusions then, some of the implications. All right. First of all, do we see advertising in shampoo? Do we see advertising? The brain is like, I don't know, because I never pay attention because I'm a guy. Ladies, do we see advertising in shampoo? A little or a lot? Yeah. So we see lots of advertising. Lots of advertising in this market, right? Because think about it, guys. What's your job as the advertising person? You need to convince people that what? These might seem like close substitutes, but they're not close substitutes. Ours doesn't have any paraffin. It won't weigh down your hair. Ours has no sulfate. It won't strip the color out of your hair. Ours won't dry out your hair. Ours controls for dandruff, right? There's lots of things that they tell us in their commercials about why their shampoo's better, right? So we see lots of advertising. Remember, the reason we're advertising, I need to convince consumers that these are not close substitutes. Right? I need to convince you these are not close substitutes and ours is better. Our brand is better. So, what about prices? Are we going to see identical prices like for wheat? Do we see shampoo have identical prices? No. So we don't see identical prices. But when you're at Walmart, do you see a whole lot of $20 shampoos? No, they kind of range from what? A couple bucks to $6, $7, right? So there's a pretty tight range as far as shampoos go on the Walmart shelf. And I'm not saying you can't find a premium shampoo there, but the bulk of them are fairly tight in price, right? So prices might go from, let's say, $2 to $6 or something like that. So there's a reasonably tight range. What about market power? Do firms have market power? Do firms have any market power? Do they have the ability to set their price? Now, can they set it at whatever they want? Or do they have to be a little careful? Yeah, they be a little careful, right? It's still a really competitive market, right? So they have some market power. It's not unlimited. They're not a monopoly. So firms have some market power or monopoly power. They can set their price. So they are a price setter. But they have to be careful, right? So they can set their price. They're a price setter, but they have to be careful. So they must take into account the prices of other shampoos. All right. So that's why I said monopolistic competition is competition with a hint of monopoly power. It's not full monopoly power. You're a price setter, but that doesn't mean you can just put $20 on your price tag. No one's buying your shampoo at $20. You've got to set a price that's within reason given your competition. So guys, let's go back. We've made one real change. Everyone agree? What was that one real change that we've made? What was that? So we got rid of perfect information. What's the other big change we made? We went from homogeneous products to slightly differentiated products. That's really the main change, right? We had homogeneous products, wheat, and now we have slightly differentiated products. And do you agree that one change has created an industry that looks very different, right? It has advertising. It has different prices. It has firms that have a little bit of market power, as long as they're careful about setting their price. So do you understand what I mean about we need to make sure that we understand how our assumptions generate our conclusions, right? Because we've made very small changes in assumptions, and boom, the conclusions are really different, right? So we need to make those connections. All right. The third market structure is called oligopoly. Oligopoly. Now, I'm going to put kind of some little dash lines here to indicate, and you should make a note, that this is a pretty big jump. We're going to make a lot of changes. So from perfect competition to monopolistic competitions, kind of small jumps in assumptions, but now we're going to make a pretty big set of assumption changes. Okay? So our assumptions number one is no longer the same. We have a few very large firms. A few very large firms. Assumption number two. We can have oligopolies with homogeneous products. Or we can see ones with heterogeneous products. Homogeneous products or heterogeneous products. Third, the thing that makes this particularly interesting is assumption number three. We see what we call strategic interdependence. Strategic interdependence. Now, strategic interdependence. We understand the word strategic, right? Strategic, based on strategy. And interdependence. Interdependence means that what you do affects me, and what I do affects you. So strategic interdependence. What you do affects me, what I do affects you. So this is an industry that's fun to study because you see examples of strategic interdependence. And finally, assumption number four is that we do see barriers to entry. And that's going to limit entry. For example, barriers to entry that limit entry into the industry could be things like size of the existing firms, brand names that you have to compete against. And we'll talk more about barriers to entry. But there are things that keep others out. Like you're entering a market, you got to compete against these really large firms. They've got well-established brand names. Makes it really hard to enter, right? So what would be some examples here? Well, one example might be cell service. Cell services. So guys, who are the players in cell service? When we talk about cellular, who are the players? Verizon. Okay, so we've got Verizon. Who else? What was that? AT&T. Sprint. And then there one other big one? T-Mobile. All right. So does that sound like an oligopoly? Few very large firms, right? I mean, there's 4, it sounds like, big players, right? 4 big players. Do you agree that that's probably a homogeneous product? Now, they package it differently, right? They package it differently in the plans. But guys, can you tell the difference between a call on a Verizon network versus a call on an AT&T network? Can you? So if I call you, you can tell me what network I'm on. Well, in certain locations, but if I just stand here and call you, can you tell me what cell phone service I have? Probably not, right? So in rural areas, I agree, it starts to have different degrees of coverage. But generally, it's a homogeneous product, right? Guys, do we see strategic interdependence with cell phones? Think about their advertising. Think about their advertising. Do they ever pick on each other in their ads? Yeah. I mean, that's all they do, right? They pick on each other in their ads. That's strategic interdependence. So if Verizon has a promotion, do you think AT&T and Sprint and T-Mobile are going to try something to offset that? Yeah. And if Verizon says, we have the best coverage, and I'm going to show you my map, and I'm going to show you their map, is then T-Mobile going to try to respond with something else, saying, no, that's not true? That's interdependence, right? When I was younger, we didn't have cell phones, but we had long-distance services. They used to call us and offer us money to change companies. I don't know if they still do much of that, but AT&T used to call and say, we will give you $100, and when you cash this check, that gives us permission to change you from Sprint to AT&T. That's strategic interdependence, all right? So guys, do you think we're going to see barriers to entry? Do you think it would be easy to enter the cellular phone industry? Think about all the fixed costs. Think about how large these firms are. Think about their brand names that are established. Is that going to keep others out? Absolutely. All right. Another example might be soft drinks. Soft drinks. So with the soft drink industry, I'm going to do this in another color so you can keep the notes straight. Do we have some major players in the soft drink industry? Who are they? Coke and Pepsi, right? That's a special case of the oligopoly. We call it a duopoly because there's really 2 main players. So are they selling a homogeneous or a heterogeneous product? Are they identical? No, but they're very close, right? So they're heterogeneous probably, but they're very, very similar, right? They're very close substitutes. Guys, do we see strategic interdependence between Coke and Pepsi? Yeah, right? Think about their ads. Think about their ads. We do see strategic interdependence. And are there barriers to entry? Do you think it would be easy to compete with Coke and Pepsi? Right? I mean, guys, you can go anywhere in the world and they know Coke. They may not be able to speak a word of English, but they know Coca-Cola. So you've got a huge company that's global, And you're going to now enter and compete against the size of their firm and the investment that they've made and their distribution network that goes across all countries, and you're going to compete against their brand. Those are some pretty significant barriers to entry, right? One other I can think of, automobiles. Automobiles. Do we have a few very large players? Few large players in the automobile industry? Again, everyone agree that would be a heterogeneous product, right? Do we see strategic interdependence? If one is coming up with some kind of finance offer, we're going to give you 0% down, or then finance the whole thing, or maybe we offer you 0% financing for 4 years. You think the other companies are going to do something like that? Yeah, because they're strategically independent. Do you also agree it's a barrier to entry? Do you think it would be easy to enter and compete with Toyota and Honda and Ford and GM and those players? No. So that's going to keep entry very, very limited. So oligopoly is an interesting industry because of this strategic interdependence, because there's big players. So when you're watching TV, you're going to see advertising. So does everyone agree? We pretty much have already covered the conclusions. Lots of advertising? Yes. Strategic interdependence changes the way they do business? Absolutely. All right. So let's very quickly talk about the last market structure. So make sure in your notes in oligopoly, you've gotten, we see strategic behavior, we see lots of advertising, so make sure you get that in your notes here. So we talked about advertising, we talked about strategic behavior. Guys, do these firms have market power? Yeah, market power. But is it unlimited? No. Are they monopolies? No. But they have market power. Are they price setters? Yeah. Do they have to be careful, though, about setting their price? Can AT&T just set whatever price it wants? No. It's got to think about the competition. Good. So, last market structure, monopoly. We have an industry comprised of only one firm. An industry comprised of one firm. For it to stay a monopoly, we have no close substitutes. And number 3, for you to stay a monopolist, clearly we have high, sometimes you see the word perfect, barriers to entry. All right. So next class period, we're going to start with perfect competition, and then we're going to move to monopoly. All right.